Hello and thank you for joining in on today's training. Heart & Solutions is a proud provider of CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below to find and take your quiz.
Thank you, everyone who is here. Like I said, we've got a great group today, a very large group. And for some of you, this may be your first training with Heart & Solutions, and you need a training. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Dr. Colleen Grote. I am the Vice President of our therapy department at Heart & Solutions, but I also run You Need a Training, which is our continuing education program here. And before we begin this morning and dive into our training on making reflections relatable, I just want to take a moment to go over a few housekeeping items. Our training today is scheduled for 2 hours. There isn't a scheduled break, but we are all adults, so please make sure that you take care of yourself during our time together today, and do whatever you may need to do to make sure that you are attending to your needs. So again, I am so excited that you are all here with us today. And many of you are here because you know Jen, you've seen some of Jen's content, but I want to give you a little bit deeper of an introduction to Jen and what we're talking about today. And so during today's training, Jen will be discussing how child-centered play therapy works in the playroom, but the difficulty that can sometimes happen in translating to parents how those techniques can be used in day-to-day life. Through a discussion of child-centered play therapy skills and the real-life application of those, you will have an opportunity to develop new ways to encourage parents to build communication and trust with their children. And Jennifer Sims, for those of you who may know of her but may not know everything about her, is a registered play therapist. She is the clinical director of the Redwood Center for Children and Families in Felton, California. Jen has been a licensed therapist for nearly 20 years and currently provides child-centered and other non-directive play therapies to children and their families. We are incredibly lucky to have Jennifer with us today to share her knowledge about play therapy and working with parents to bring these skills home. I know that you are going to leave with some really great insight and new ideas today, and I don't want to take up any more of this valuable time. So Jen, I'm going to hand it over to you so that we can get started.
Okay. Hi, hello. Nice to see everybody. I am Jen, and that was all about me. Today we're going to talk about relatable reflections for everyday life. So what we're going to do is we are going to, let's see, we just did Who Am I? We also did Who Are You? And what are we doing today? Today, we're going to talk more about reflections. We're going to start off by talking a little bit about child-centered play and some of the gifts of child-centered play. And we're going to go a little bit also into using reflections with parents, like you as a clinician using reflection with parents as a way, to model reflection. And get parents kind of used to it, and also so you can help, you can dive deeper into your relationship with them. And then we're going to spend some time brainstorming some ideas for how would you use reflection at wake up time, at breakfast, at a transition, at a birthday party. How do you use it all the time? All right, so that's kind of what we're doing today. So let's get started. I want to start with a little bit of a story time. I'm going to tell mine. I'm going to go really quick, and then I'm going to ask you to think of one, and we'll share it here. So my story is about really a moment that I was like, you know what? Kids really know what they're doing, and I really need to trust them. So it's like a moment when a kid led the way that I was really transformed. And so I was working with this little boy, and he had a lot of sibling rivalry issues, and in so he would demand to only sleep with the mom and other things like that. So I thought, well, it's very important to create a safe space in the playroom for him to have and like kind of have ownership, because he has this sibling rivalry going on. Because I'm like thinking about it like I think about it. So one day he comes in, and his dad comes with him and is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I had to bring his sister. We had childcare issues, so we're just going to go sit in the kitchen and have your session." So they go and sit in the kitchen. We go into the playroom, and the boy says, "You know what? I really got to go get my sister because she really wants to be here today." And I said, "Oh, okay." So then he like ran down and got his sister, and they came running back, and they were like, they were so excited. I had no idea. And they came into the playroom, and they just had this extremely beautiful session that I would never have thought of. I would have never thought of it. They I got so much more information. I understood so much, like, duh, I understood so much more about their relationship. And so later on, I wrote to the dad and I said, that was such an interesting thing that happened. And I'm so grateful for it because I found out so much more. And he said, well, yeah, when the boy came into the kitchen, he said, Jen says all siblings, all sisters and brothers have to be together when they come here to play. So my sister has to come. So it's like he even created this like story for me and the story for to like make all of this happen for him. And I just thought that's that's brilliant. Like he did the brilliant thing that I for some reason didn't think of. And when I am on TikTok being like, let children lead the way, that's what I mean. Like let them make a decision about their care because it's probably the right thing to do. Even if it doesn't really look like it through our adult point of view. Like that's an important thing to remember. So I want you to take a moment, write a quick, you could write this down or you could think of it in your head. I trust you. About a time when you noticed a child's decision in the playroom, like change the course of therapy. Because this experience did change the course of therapy for me and for this boy. Okay. So I'm going to give you like until 7:15. It's 7:13 right now. Okay. I read the stories in the chat, and I hope you did too. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is there anyone who would like to verbally share a story?
The story that came to my mind was a very recent session. Last week, I was doing a dyadic session with an adopted kid and his adoptive dad, and there's a lot of hard feelings there. And the kid just ran out of the playroom and into the like waiting area, which was empty because it was a weekend. And sometimes I will like help kids make their own like private spaces in the room that they can hide in when they need to. But I hadn't introduced that with him, and I just thought that was like he's deciding that he needs to titrate this experience. He needs to get away. And so I just walked back and forth between both spaces for a while, and that worked. It ended up working fine. And I'm going to take that and work with it next time I see him.
Yeah. He gave you a lot of information about how he can titrate. That's such a good word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. There's some new messages. Should I just read? I'm going to read a couple of these out loud. I had some kids that had experienced complex trauma. They weren't quite ready to talk about everything yet, but I wanted them to associate therapy as a safe experience. I feel like letting them be little and choose some experiences for us to do together has helped establish trust and positive feelings in therapy. Yeah. Yeah, kids really get a lot out of the kind of independence in the playroom, and what our job is to set the environment, make the environment for this to happen. And I think this is a really hard thing for parents to understand. Of course, we all know child-centered play was invented by Virginia Axline, and these are her 8 principles of non-directive play therapy. And then that's been kind of moved over, not kind of, but like literally exactly, like used by child-centered play therapy. And these are the principles: warm, friendly relationship with the child with a focus on establishing rapport, accepting the child's expressions, feelings, and choices exactly as they are, feelings of permissiveness so that they can express themselves, alert to feelings and themes that the child is expressing and reflects those back. So this is us today, so that they feel understood and can better learn about their own behavior. Maintains a deep respect for the child's ability to solve his or her own problems, not giving advice, doing for the child. So a lot of times we're working with kids on what their problems are. So we're using a lot of reflection here too. Does not direct the child's actions or conversations in any way. The child leads the way, does not hurry or rush the child, and establishes only those limitations that are necessary to maintain safety and make the child aware of their responsibility in the relationship. So you can't hurt me, you can't hurt yourself, you can't break my things, or, you know, do anything that messes up the playroom. All right. So this is what we are, these are really the things that we're doing to create the environment that can lead a kid to be like, you know what, I need to run out of the room, and I know that's okay. And that's how I create space for myself. Lifelong lesson there. And you didn't say like, listen, what you got to do if you feel upset is just, you know, do a this is my favorite thing to say, do a starfish pose, or like run out of you. Like they knew that from their heart. And let's talk about the gifts of child-centered play therapy. I think this is something really important to think about, especially when we're working with parents who say, what are the tools? What are the tools that you are giving my child? Well, here they are. This is what they are. So this is extremely easy. I decided to make this kind of like a match thing, but it's not that hard, just for funsies. So how would you match these? It's like, this is what's gonna, on the left is what they're going to gain in child-centered play therapy, and on the right, it's like, what are the skills that they're gaining? So I don't know why that one is already there, but the first one, awareness and understandings of feelings, beliefs, and hope. Which skill do you think they're getting there? Mindfulness and sense of self, awareness of basic dignity and goodness, emotional intelligence. You can just like speak up.
Emotional intelligence and communication skills.
Mindfulness and sense of self. I was kind of like, yeah, that's it. But then awareness and understanding of feelings, beliefs, desires, and hopes, which we are using reflection to help a child gain awareness of their feelings, beliefs, desires, and hopes by tracking, reflecting, all of those things that we're seeing them doing. And they're getting an awareness of who they are and what they're doing in the moment, what they're doing with their body, what they might be feeling at the same time. Ability to self-regulate, develop self-control, and comply with limits based on self-control, not like white knuckling it. So they're getting their own locus of control and a basic sense of freedom. Exactly what Alex was describing when the child ran out of the room. Ability to express feelings, beliefs. So the ability to express feelings, beliefs, desires, and hopes. What do you think that's connected to?
This is what Sarah was saying, emotional intelligence and communication skills.
Yeah. Yes. So being able to like say what they are feeling. And that's something that I think we'll see in kids, and many of you have probably seen, is that a kid might start using a word that they've heard you say a lot of times. And they might start being able to have more insight. I'm just really thinking about a kid I'm working with who I started working with really young, and they would do tons and tons of sand trays. And now they're getting to be almost 10 years old, and they're talking a lot about their dreams and goals for life. And I can't help but think that those two are connected, that the making, I don't know, 50 sand trays over the years, and now being a person who's like conceptualizing who they want to be, and where they want to go. I think that matters and is connected. Seeing themselves as good, valuable, and lovable. So just seeing them as themselves as a good person, awareness of basic dignity and goodness. So again, so anybody who has even just these things is having like a good shot at life. Like they're just walking through life, they're feeling good. They're not having a lot of the problems that kids come to play therapy for. But wait, there's more. Seeing others as approachable, good, and lovable. What do you think that's connected to?
Attachment.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not a hard thing. Yeah, relationships and attachment. So it's like when I know in my TikToks, I just get so much flack about reflection, but that's because, I mean, some of it I think is because one, they're not in a relationship with me, but also the kids in child-centered play therapy see themselves as really good. So when somebody's saying, I see you, it's not really a threat. You know, it's a good thing. Developing confidence in making choices, sense of competency and freedom. Developing empathy for others. What do you think that's connected to?
Decrease in self-centeredness and increase in self-giving.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I just went the same pattern for everyone. Yeah. Starting to notice what's happening with other people in the room. Developing capacity for forgiveness, resilience, and ability to heal, because we're going to have so many conflicts in our life. Okay. And then the last one, obviously, so promoting success in school and family, immediate flourishing, promoting success in one's committed relationships, life, work, and living out one's values, future flourishing, rich and meaningful life. So in child-centered play, kids are really getting that bottoms up, inside out. I know who I am and I feel good about my choices and I can talk about them. And if things go wrong, I can handle it. So those are really great tools for life. And it's my opinion that a child should have tools for, or like we all as humans should have tools that are like for the really hard stuff, like going on a 10-hour plane ride or something, or, you know, taking your licensing exam, or having a really big event. That's what I think we should be doing, like the starfish breath for. But most of the time, I'm thinking we should just feel okay and be focusing on what we want to do and who we want to be. Okay. So those are the tools. All right. So let's just talk about the basic skills we're going to talk about today: structuring, tracking and reflection, imaginative play, limit setting, and unconditional positive regard. So these are like the tool. These are the tools we use to create the environment that leads to the skills that we just discussed. And I am going to ask, since you started using these kinds of skills, especially reflection in the playroom, have you noticed that you use it in your everyday life? I'm seeing some nods. Even with adults? Yes. What about with strangers? Yes.
Jen, there's something in the chat that says I catch myself tracking even with my dog. It just made me chuckle.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think once we start doing these skills, they're just everywhere.
My dog loves it. He loves this. He loves Chihuahua centered play. And I'll be like, you're so excited. And yes. And it is really like a way, mostly with my own child. Yeah. if I'm with a child, if I meet a child anywhere, I am keeping it about them, really. That's what I think reflection mostly does, is it just keeps it about the child and keeps everything from the child's point of view. Are there any wait, let me see. Do I have a question thing coming up? Yes. Do you have any questions so far?
This isn't really about the content we've talked about so far, but it's related to limit setting. And I'm wondering what your approach is when kiddos want to bring tech into the room. And do you set limits around that?
Like screens?
Like
Games?
I had a kiddo bring his laptop in because he wanted to show me some stuff on it. And then it moved into games, and I was struggling to figure out if I was being rigid around it or if it was
Yeah.
actually deterring from it.
How old are they?
They're 8.
Yeah. I would say, well, let's look at it on my laptop and
Okay.
then shut it off, because I am like, sure, let's look at it. Oh, I'm a let's look that up kind of person. It
Okay.
depending on the child. Some children I'm like, I don't know where my phone is because I don't want that anywhere near the
Yeah.
playroom. And other kids I'm like, oh, I need to know this. Let's watch.
Right.
I want to, or they are telling me about something and I want to know what it looks like and what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. That's helpful. Thanks.
All right. We're ready to move on.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I'm brand new to child therapy. I came from a CBT background, so it's like just converting all of this. I love it. Very interesting, very different. And so my question is, as I've been trying to learn about this field, when we're playing and then it's time to leave, am I supposed to, like what I was doing before I was learning about child therapy is I asked the little 7-year-old to help me clean up,
Yeah.
but then are we not supposed to do that, to have them clean up?
Well, in child-centered play therapy, the therapist cleans up afterwards. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. One being that it would be like, they're expressing themselves and then we're asking them to take back, like clean up after themselves. So it'd be like somebody who came in, cried their eyes out, and then we were like, okay, just push that back in and you go. I'd never want a kid to, I mean, honestly, inside sometimes I do, but I just, have to work on that. I never want a kid to not take something out because they think it's going to be too hard to clean up. I want them to have freedom to just take things out. Some kids need to make very, very big messes. And that's a part of like their, I don't know, lots of power and control, lots of things. And then there's just the power struggle at the end. For me personally, I want them to play all the way right up to the end and then leave.
Okay.
And I don't find a lot of value in being like, well, you're going to get a prize if you can clean up. So, and there's so much relief for kids to play and not clean up. So those are my things. And if anybody has anything to add, I would be welcome to hear it.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. We are going to do a group project. So this means that you are going to get into breakout groups for five minutes. And so I'm going to have you answer some questions. All right. So I want you to pay attention. Here's our tasks as we are listening to this story. Write at least 3 reflections to use during the caregiver session. What connections can we make about the child-parent relationship based on the family history? That's just, I don't know, that's just a little something extra for you to do. Little bonus. And this is even more bonus. What themes of play are you seeing in the caregiver session? All right. So I'm going to read this now. All right. You have been doing child-centered play therapy with Zayden, a 9-year-old boy with ADHD, for 2 months, and Zayden's play is quite aggressive, noticeably, and he spends part of each session lining up monsters and executing them. and he engages in a lot of, this is theme alert, power and control scenarios, dressing up as a police officer and arresting you, saying things like you murdered his family. Zayden is very respectful of the rules of the playroom, and at the end of each session, Zayden stops and then takes some time to sit and create a piece of art or jewelry to take to his sister. Zayden's parents are married and they're stable, no problem, they're not having issues. And the dad is a police officer and the mom is a banker. And you have met with them 3 times throughout the course of your working with Zayden. What they came for is they want help with supporting Zayden with extreme emotions, his very negative outlook, very negative self-talk. Sometimes he hits himself. And then he has these very unusual fears, like he has big existential fears. And all of this occurs at home. School is fine. And both parents are not sure why he's acting like this other than ADHD. And so in the initial parent meeting, Zayden's father described, he's not a bad guy, but he said, I'm a pretty authoritarian. Like, you do what I say. And you were like, well, okay, but here's some ways you could talk to Zayden. Here's some ways to reflect. And you give him some education and he picks it up really quick and comes back and says, oh, you know, that was really helpful. And Zayden spilled something and I used these techniques and we were able to resolve this so much quicker. Thank you. But mom is having a really big issue. She's having a lot of power struggles with him, and most of her projects end up in tears and meltdowns on both of their parts. You invite her to the office for a one-to-one meeting to discuss more in depth. Okay, now we're getting to the meat. Any questions so far? Okay. So here's what she says about the latest project that they worked on together. We were making cookies. I was trying to read the directions and all he could do was jump around and try to grab at everything I was doing. I kept asking him politely to calm down. And you say, what do you mean by politely? Well, like, Zayden, please sit down. You're making it hard to do this. Don't you want the cookies? So like those kinds of things, but over and over again. Please sit, stop. I need you to stop, calm down. So I decide I'm going to let him help more because I want him to have more control. But when I was letting him put the vanilla in, he spilled half the bottle in and I just blew up and I started yelling and then he started crying and yelling and we did not make cookies that night. So you notice that she's starting to cry. So before the session ends, Jane also tells you that she had a really troubling relationship with her own younger brother and is currently estranged from her mother. So here's what I want you to do in your group. I'm going to say this again. Write at least 3 possible reflections to use during Jane's session. So this is the practice for you to use reflection with parents so that she feels seen, heard, and understood. So because you want her to tell you all of this stuff and you be the really safe person and you are modeling the skills that you use with the children. And then just, what do you think about Jane's relationship with Zayden based on her family history? Doesn't get along with her brother, her younger brother, estranged from her mom. Might she be thinking about herself? And okay, just what are some themes of the imaginative play? And can you, if you can, write a sentence connecting the themes of Zayden's play and what you have learned about what's happening at home. So this is just some extra skill practice on how do you talk about this to parents? How do you reflect what you're seeing in the playroom back to parents and be like, that makes sense because this is what's happening at home. And then when you come back, we're going to talk more about how we can teach the banker mom, what's her name? Jane? I can't remember, to apply structuring, reflection, tracking, unconditional positive regard so CCPT skills in this situation. Okay, so I'm going to stop. You're going to go on breakout rooms. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And then also, Colleen has put everything in the chat for you to reflect back on. So you know what? We don't have to be perfect, so don't worry about it. All right. Did everybody return?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, now I would love the group share out. You might not be shocked, but I'm always the group sharer. So I hope somebody out there is going to volunteer to share out. What are some of the reflections that you came up with to use during the caregiver session based on what you were hearing?
We talked about wanting to like validate Jane in that moment, and acknowledging like both her and Zayden's excitement to make the cookies. But it seemed like their excitement kind of didn't end up meeting the same level. So maybe like it does sound like a tricky situation. Like both of us were overwhelmed. You had a vision of this going a certain way. We're both excited to get these cookies made, and things just weren't lining up. They weren't aligned.
Yeah. So you both had so much excitement going into this, and things just didn't end up the way that you expect. The alignment was not aligning. Yeah, great. What else?
We kind of were on the similar line of, man, like you were so excited to connect with your kid and you were doing this thing and working hard to make these connections.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and how disappointing and frustrating for this to end up in tears. And you tried so hard and worked so hard. Like, it's got to be so disappointing for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of our group members highlighted that she wonders if there isn't some tension between if the husband is very authoritarian and that like is there some negative self-talk or some frustration that when she tries to do something that he doesn't listen and she's trying to be polite, but she doesn't seem to have the same, like she's struggling with this power and control dynamic that she sees maybe her husband have.
That is a really good thought to have, and I would have had that thought too, but I can say no, that's not going on in this case.
Okay.
However, okay, hold on, I'm going to go back to that. If you were going to use a reflection to try to like get down to that business, what could it be? I don't know. I've just thought of this question. I don't have an answer in mind. Like,
I mean, I think I would probably just start with it sounds like you were feeling really frustrated and overwhelmed, that you had these really high hopes, and that you were really trying to be patient and communicate with him, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Our group was also thinking of a way to reflect that this seems to be like a pattern when they try and do projects. Like, this doesn't seem like a one-off.
Yeah.
So reflecting, like, that happens a lot when you all sit down to do a project together.
Yeah. Yeah. Your projects end up in explosions. I don't know. Depends on what's happening, but your projects together fail all the time. Maybe not that, but something along the lines. Yeah, that's a really good point to make. That this is a pattern. You keep wanting to have these connections, and these connections keep misfiring. Any other reflections to use when you're talking to her about this frustrating experience that she had? What about, let's move down to thinking about the relationship that she has. Somebody brought up with the husband, so I thought that was a good thing to think about. But also with the brother and the mom. What connections can you make, and also how might you use reflection to learn more about that?
One of our group members, and we talked about in the group, was, I hear you bringing up your relationships with your brother and mother. What's coming up with that for you? Can we take a minute to feel those feelings?
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to steal. Can we take a minute to feel? I don't know if that's me, but I'm going to try it on. Can we take a minute to feel those feelings? Yeah. Yeah, I'm noticing that when a question that I have, this isn't necessarily child-centered, sometimes for parents, are like, when you have this interaction with your child, how old do you feel? Do you feel like an adult? Are you like really in your grown-up self? And like the little brother thing, I feel so relate, because I have a little brother, and it like drives so much of my core frustrations. And so that might be me using my insight on that. But yeah, like I wonder how old you feel. Do you feel like yourself, like your mom? And also I'm curious, like, what are some feelings that she has about herself as a mom if she's estranged from her mother? They might be like, you might say, yeah, like, so you got an issue with your mom, and then you also have an issue with your child. How is that? Like, there's some mom stuff coming up here. And she might be like, yeah, not talking to my mom was the best thing that ever happened to me, and it makes me a stronger mom. Okay, got it. Or she might be like, yeah, this is so unresolved, and I just don't know how to like fix this with my mom, and makes me feel terrible, like I'm not effective. So kind of using reflection to dive deeper to help the parent learn more about themselves, their feelings, their motivations, what's going on. And then what are some of the themes of play that you saw? Or did anybody write the sentence connecting the themes of the play? And what you have learned about what is happening at home?
I don't know how to like form it into a pretty sentence, but I was noticing that like mom has very similar themes of control as they're doing these projects to the control that Zayden is having, like is trying to work through it and process. And so, I wonder what's going on for mom where she feels out of control, or why she needs control to feel safe.
Yeah.
I think also, like, kind of adding on that, what's coming up is he's vying for control not only of like external things of the situation, but with ADHD, I can imagine he doesn't have a lot of control of himself and control of his own impulses and behaviors, and trying to work through that also.
Yeah. So power and control comes up a lot in Zayden's play, and I'm noticing that that seems to be happening when in this cookie making thing that you had. I should say that, and it seemed like there was a lot of power. You guys were struggling for control while you were making cookies together. So like this is something that's happening in the playroom, and see that it's happening at home, and you got to have a lot of control too to feel safe.
I'm curious about mistake making and how okay that is in the home. It seems like less okay with mom and how she's like showed her cards here. But in the playroom, when there are mistakes, like I'm curious how he responds.
Yeah. Let's say that he responds in a really great way, but he makes a lot of mistakes. But it's not like it's a lot of impulse control mistakes, but not a lot of like purposeful, let me try to see if I can test a limit mistake. And like when you're doing child-centered play, mistakes are tricky, but a mistake that happens again and again and again that is dangerous, I would set a limit on, because I want a child to be like, check your impulses, even if it's a mistake, because mistakes can be very dangerous for other people. And then there's the kind of like, I'm gonna break this, or I'm gonna do this, like to try to get you to, but his is definitely more of the former. He's just very clunky and has a hard time remembering, and as like his body is not very, so I hope that's helpful.
So, and I think for me, this is where child-centered play therapy gets tricky, because when I work with parents, I tend to do more of like, I guess, the psychoeducational piece of things. And so for me, I kind of focused more on the child having ADHD, because I think there's a piece where he got diagnosed with that, right? And so for me, I would want to maybe explain to the parent how that might come out in their interaction, right? So if she's constantly saying you need to sit still, you need to do it X, Y, and Z. So then my perspective is kind of showing the parent that, hey, these are some ADHD symptoms. And when you try to be so rigid with your child, then you're not able to have that connection, and you're kind of taking all the fun away, because they are inherently wanting to play this way, or do it how it works for them. And we're over here as parents trying to make them fit in this pretty little box. But I know that's not CCPT like directly. So then I don't know if I'm doing too much on my end with working with the parents and trying to explain that versus completely CCPT work.
Yeah. Does anybody have any thoughts about that before I jump in?
I think many people do psychoeducation when working with parents, and I think there's a lot of space for that, even in the CCPT space, right? Because when we're with the child, we want to be using CCPT mostly, right? And then with the parents, I think it depends on what they're needing in that moment, and I think there's a lot of space for psychoeducation.
Right, especially if we're talking about any neurodivergence, it's important for parents to know if we're interpreting all behavior as defiance, or there's a piece that's missing here that they maybe need to understand more.
Sorry.
Super. Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
I'm sorry too. I wanted to put my hands over my mouth. I definitely agree with psychoeducation, and I also feel like a lot of parents are just go, 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 and they don't take a second to pause and look at their feelings and maybe like how some of their family dynamics and how their stuff impacts that. And I think sometimes I find parents kind of want to rush ahead to a solution, and I totally understand that. And I think sometimes it's like kind of depending on the parent, which kind of way you go first, both are needed, and of like pausing and like, hey, let's take a second. Like, I promise we'll come back to this, but like, let's take a second and dig for a minute. Because a lot of times they can't pause with their kids and do those kinds of things. And so I feel like a lot of times both is needed. It's just a matter of chicken or egg, which comes first and what the parents are needing in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
No, I don't want to. I want you to go. I would prefer to hear from other people. Yeah.
For me, what came up was just there. I have some parents where they are hungry for that psychoed, and it really is life changing and shifting to be like, are your expectations reasonable? Or like Melissa, you were talking about the defiance. Like, is there another way that we could look at this behavior? And is it defiance or is it a lack of impulse control because that part of the brain is not where you want it to be? And do you have fair expectations? But I also have some parents where, like, as you guys were talking about this, I immediately got nervous because I feel like there would be some resistance of trying to share with certain parents that maybe their expectations for power and control over this child who's struggling with impulse control that may not be well received. And how do you navigate that and like, weave that path for them?
Is that a question for me at the end? Yeah.
Yeah, for anyone really, just because I just noticed my own anxiety about that come up.
Well, I'm gonna, and anybody can jump in, but I think this is kind of like what we're talking about. Developing a relationship with the parent and using reflection and getting to know them in a way that you can start to say some of these really hard things, because you are creating an environment, a safe place for the parent to be seen, heard, and understood, to do and say almost anything they need to do and say. And you're setting limits and boundaries around how, I mean, a lot of different things, but you're setting limits and boundaries around, you're not going to let them go off the rails. You're going to help keep them like in the guide rails, and you're going to help them use their imagination to figure out how they're going to transform this or change this. And also help them understand how to do imaginative play potentially. So that's like, a person who has resistance to change and you have a relationship with them, you can say, whoa, this is really hard. It's really hard to hear these kinds of things. It's scary. This is your child. You want your precious angel to be perfect. And if you have the relationship, you can say things like that. That's kind of my thought on it. And I am also sometimes scared. So, and sometimes I'd say, I'm going to say that next time. So, it's like you got to trust your gut and walk down that path with them. And a lot of, this is another thing, like why CCPT is so great. Cause I also think that in the or I guess non-directive in general, because I think in the process of everything, we're going to get there we are not going to have, if the parent's going to figure it out. All right. Any other thoughts on that, or comments or questions?
I have one other comment, question, thought. I'm curious, like how these reflections or how you approach this might change with different cultural norms within families and different backgrounds. And yeah, like how do we accept a lot of different ways of like how they want their family structure to look or the rules in the house to look? And yeah, I guess I've always like, I'm trying to mull on how to reflect that without saying this is the one way that this needs to look. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess as you're talking, I'm like thinking this is where cultural competence and cultural humility come in. And we don't have to know everything about every culture, but we can be like open to the fact that we don't know. And hold on, I lost my train of thought. An unconditional positive regard for all family structures. I'm sorry, I was looking at you and then you disappeared. Like the screen changed, so I got a little like, where did you go, Prentice Fairbrother? Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. So anyway, so yeah, and coming at it with like I think an open heart and an open mind, because families do look really different. Families can be caregivers, they can be foster parents, adoptive parents, grandparents, two moms, two dads, a mom and a dad who hate each other's guts, two moms on one side, a mom and a dad on the other side, polyamory. I mean, let's like, yeah, all of it. And we can use, I would still go back to all of these skills, and also, especially if I didn't know anything about the culture and I had stuff to learn, I would use these skills to be like, to create a safe environment for a person to say whatever they needed to say about their family.
Thanks.
And I am not, and not come and ask questions and not be the expert. Any other comments about that?
Jen, I'm curious, just because I'm always curious how every play therapist approaches parent sessions. Like, how often are you doing that? Like, how much time are you spending with them in intakes before you're seeing kids? Like, there was a lot of talk in the chat about building that relationship up with parents, and I find it's so tricky to navigate because I'm building this relationship with this kid, but I don't see the parents as often. And sometimes the work needs to be more there, but I don't want to take time away from kids. But like, what is your approach in general with parent sessions in terms of frequency?
Okay, so well, I meet with a parent for about 15 minutes on an intake, and then I do a 1 hour session with the parents, or caregivers, or whoever's involved. And we talk all about play therapy, and I might do a demo, and I find out what's going on, and I do an intake. But I also have parents do a really big intake paperwork. So like a lot of like the questionnaire, questions about their own childhood, um, explanations of play therapy, how you should talk to your kid about it. So they're also signing tons and tons of paperwork with this information, and I'm talking to them. And then I usually meet with the kid for about 4 times, and then I will meet back again with parents. And it will go like that usually for a while. And some kids I'll think, you know what, this is going to be a long-term situation. This is not something we're going to like get over because their mom is missing. And this is like going to be ongoing. So in cases like that, I probably will stop meeting with caregivers quite as much because we're just rolling, we're going, everything's fine. And they might email me once in a while, but if I notice a shift in play, I'll be like, oh, parent meeting, let's find out what's going on. And then they're like, yeah, something changed. So that's kind of how, that's kind of how it goes. And then some people, like the case from the scenario, I did really like, I met with them, I met with the child, I met with them, I met with the child, and then this is a spoiler alert, we did filial. So we moved on to, because I was like, we need to work this out together. And then we were able to finish. So that's the story of this, a little bit more about this case. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move on. And let's talk about, hold on, I want to go back. Oh, I'm seeing a bunch of stuff in the chat too. Depends on the family. Oh, and okay, so people are also putting in their what they do in the chat. So I think that's really cool as well. And I want to pause again before I go on and say, one of my a therapist who works here just did a session, and she like accidental, or I don't know if it's accidental, but she had to schedule it with the mom and the sister and the child. So she had like this whole family session first thing. And then she met with the parent and she was like, that was so valuable. I love that. And that, so it's, I don't think that it's a hard and fast rule. But I just do think it is important to meet with parents quite a bit. Yeah. And and the more I usually don't have the child session the week that I have the parent session. I try to have the parent session during the child session. And then that child either stays home or we're meeting on Zoom, and it's fine and good because I want these parents to have all the skills that we have, because now we're going to do our segue, because we are teaching them to create environments for success for their children. That's why a kid with ADHD can come into the playroom and do great. Play out all of the things and then somehow magically have impulse control and leave on time and get along and be very successful because we're creating the environment. But a parent can also do that out in the world as best they can. So if we were talking about this situation with making cookies, how might we talk to Jane about using structuring? So structuring is beginning and ending a session, limit setting. How might she use structuring to set up this situation of cookie making? Be quiet.
I was thinking along the lines of before they engage in the cookie making, like talking about what we're about to do and what we're going to be using and what this will look like and how much fun, like kind of really setting it up.
Yeah.
Expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like when a kid comes into the playroom, you say, in here you can do and say almost anything that you want to do and say, or however it is that you set it up, but you kind of do it the same way. All right, we're going to start making cookies after dinner, and here's what we're going to do first, and here's what we're going to do next. Any other ways that she might have to structure this?
Closed choices probably of like, would you like to do this one or would you like to do that one? And kind of maybe structuring around that. That's something that I've seemed to have found to be really helpful in working with the parents that I work with, of love a good closed choice, gives the kid autonomy, and also provides that structure of like, I'm going to catch you, you know the parameters of it, and you still get a choice in this.
Yeah, I was talking about like in my own child-centered play therapy supervision about meeting a child where they are, even when it doesn't seem like CCPT, because it's like what a child needs. And so when you're out in the world like this, you might be giving more of a directive closed choice that might be better and meet this child's need more. And just kind of like some kids are like, don't copy me. It's not meeting a child where they are. If you're like, I must copy you because of CCPT, you don't, you can't do that. So, so yeah, so saying, okay, you can break the egg or pour the vanilla. I've only got capacity for one of those things inside of me. Because there's also her stuff too. Like, what about what's going on with her when he's like, you know. All right, anything else about using structuring? Sarah?
Yeah, I was thinking like it depends on if you want to eat the cookies or not afterwards, but if you're really dedicated to making them edible, then I might, and this may be too controlling, but I might kind of set it up like a cooking show where before he even enters the room, I measure everything out so that like it's really hard to mess up. Or if you're not going to do that, to be like, well, we're just going to try and see what happens. And if you put a bottle of vanilla in, we'll see how they taste.
Having like so you could structure it as like a open. I think somebody in the last training said to set it up like a cooking show too, and I thought that was a really good idea. Yeah. But I want to jump ahead. Also, the idea of the cooking show was around imaginative play as well, so you can like you're doing that. All right, and okay, so talking about when you're going to do it, talking about some of the ways you're going to do it, talking about what you want the outcome to be. In the last training, somebody had talked about maybe setting up the ingredients ahead of time, so there is no chance of pouring the bottle in. So you might have to do a lot more structuring, but that's kind of like going back to ADHD, and you can incorporate psychoeducation in, like what is going to be successful for somebody with ADHD and impulse control. Maybe they just dump in like, we want this to be successful. So they might not be cracking the egg might not be it for them. Okay. Okay, this is what we're really here for. What about tracking and reflection? Let's talk about all of the different kinds of reflections this mom, Jane, can use during a situation like this. So they come in the room, they're getting ready to do it. She set up the structure. He's looking at all the things. What happens?
Maybe reflecting that, like, you're not quite sure what to do first or what goes first.
Yeah. You're looking at everything and you don't even know where to begin. Yeah. You're so excited. You're jumping up and down.
You get to use all the adult tools today, and that's very exciting.
You're looking at all the adult tools and thinking, I'm going to use these today. You are licking your lips thinking about how good these cookies are going to be.
You're so excited that your body can't even handle it. You're bouncing up and down.
Right, yeah. So you're going to do some education, she's going to do some education around how he's feeling in the moment and letting him know that she sees him. This could, going back to structuring, they could also have a ritual where they, I don't know, do something to shake out their body before doing something like this. So, I mean, structuring can be so many things outside of the playroom, but really it's just setting up some boundaries and guidelines for a kid to live in, no matter what that looks like. All right, what about when they are starting to put the stuff in the bowl and they're stirring? What would you say to me?
I feel like when they're pouring in the vanilla and everything and it goes everywhere,
Yeah.
The kid is probably already aware of like, oh, that was probably too much vanilla, And so even just reflecting, like, oh man, like that vanilla comes out so fast,
Yeah.
would probably be more helpful than using a more shameful, language there. And would probably put the child at ease a little bit more, like, oh yeah, like sometimes I put more vanilla too, like it comes out super fast, And at the same time, I can understand how maybe that wouldn't be mom's first response at the same time either, but it's a learning experience for next time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so kind of, that's also like weaving in some unconditional positive regard. Like, oh, that came out so much faster than you thought it was going to come out. I wonder how these cookies are going to taste now. We're going to find out.
I have a thought and a question because I know some about CCPT, but I don't have training. But sometimes I tell parents to do their own reflection of their own feelings as sort of a modeling. So in this opportunity, I might say like, as the mom, like, whoa, I really thought it was gonna go so easy, and now it's not going the way I expected. And this is like, let me take a minute to like figure out what to do next, sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, Alex, I think that is such a good thing for a parent to do. And we would be even going into a little bit of synergetic play therapy, which I will not because I'm not allowed. But just kind of paying attention to what's happening in you and keeping yourself regulated. Like, well, I'm shocked. I did not know it was going to come out that fast. Hold on. I don't know how our cookies are going to taste now, but just keeping it, this is where I'm going back. If you've got your structure set up, you can relax as well. And you're kind, and if you don't have expectations are another thing to manage. Other kinds of reflections that Jane could use.
Like that was so surprising that it came out that fast. What should we do now? Like maybe we start over and try again. Like there's always another opportunity.
Yeah.
Or having like a practice bowl on the side like before putting it into everything else.
Yeah. I want to go back again to structuring, and also say something I'm remembering from the last time is that people said, or we kind of also said, sometimes a child might not even be ready for the making of the cookies. So maybe you start off with the rollout, the cookies that already come pre-made. So I'm just saying there's so many different ways to structure for success, but that's important. You're structuring for success. All right, tracking and reflection. I'm sorry, I feel like I just went off on a tangent, Prentice, from what you were saying, but okay, any more ideas for tracking and reflection?
I think it would be interesting, like if you notice they're really concentrating when they're stirring, or like he's stirring slowly and really paying attention. Oh, you care so much about making these cookies. Look at you. Like you're really paying attention to what you're doing and stirring that. You're making sure it's not splashing out everywhere. Like almost that encouragement and noticing and like of how well they're doing, how well the kid's doing, and really paying attention, or even just like, oh my gosh, you're so excited, but you're really like trying to stir slowly so the cookie dough doesn't go everywhere. So we'll have enough, but obviously keep it shorter.
Yeah. And if you were with a parent and you wanted to teach them this and you told them this, but you wanted to do more, how could you teach them about tracking and reflection experientially?
Doing it for them.
Yeah. Go into your play kitchen or go into your real kitchen or go get anything you have and have them play or pretend to do something, and you track and reflect. So have them pretend to make cookies if you have a kitchen or whatever. Have them pretend to do something and you're walking around and you're noticing all of the things and using tracking and reflection to give them the idea of how it feels, what it's like, and how they can use it with their child. My favorite, honestly, one of my favorite things is when I have a parent who, let's say they're dropping their kid off and their kid like runs into the playroom and they'll say, "You're so excited to be here." And then be like, look at me like I did it. Like that's what you want. You want the parent to be taking these little risks and using these skills and finding them successful. Another thing you could do is have a parent come in, and if it was a safe thing, and observe the session with you. Have them observe you playing so that they can get an idea of what it looks like when you're interacting with their child. And I also try to do it as much as I can. If I'm outside in the waiting room, I will say, "You're so excited to be here. I will never," and I also will not let a parent talk to me. I will try my best not to let a parent talk to me about a child in front of a child. So if a parent's like, they had a really tough week, I'll turn and say, "Your week was tough." So they're in it. Any comments or questions?
How do you, I think, because that's a great point, because I have so many and I try to do like the redirection back to the child, focusing only on the child.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of parents, unfortunately, in the community agency I'm in, they will talk about the child and try in front. So how do you manage that?
I will say, well, one, I talk about it a lot in the beginning about the fact that I don't want to just usually keep my relationship separate, and how to contact me if they need to. So they might say, "Hey, let's make an appointment soon." They can say that. They can email me. sometimes parents will be like, this happened. And I'll be like, great, thank you so much. Like, I'm not going to say anything to the kid, but I am going to keep it in mind. And the, hold on, I lost my train of thought. Yeah. So yeah, and then if they are talking to me in front of the child while I'm outside of the waiting room, I'll just turn and incorporate the child in the conversation. And then parents pretty much are like, "Oh, I'll have to talk," because I just, yeah, and then they'll have to shift and they won't do it again. If they have something private to say. So that's kind of how I handle it. Is that helpful? I don't know if that would work at a community agency.
That's very helpful, actually.
Or I'll say, oh, that's such a great point, and I just, you know what, email me about that because I really want to talk, but I can't talk right now. So just reflect, like, again, and then like limit setting. That's really important. Oh yeah. So state the feeling. You really want to talk to me about that? I need you to email me. I need you to give me a call, or however it is that you communicate. And we're gonna do a deep dive actually on this. It's like not invalidating. Everything you're saying is really important, and then yeah, just say you really have a lot to tell me, and I just want to remind you that in here, in our playroom, in our therapy, you and I meet outside because I want your child to have such a feeling of permissiveness. And I never want them to think I'm telling you what we play right after we play it.
I have a connecting question to that. I do. I was wondering how you explain to the child too, that like conversations between you and the parent, because knowing that, you and the parent talk and how children may feel about that, I'm wondering how you might explain that to a child.
Yeah, I say, if I am explaining it, like if they're really young, I probably just don't tell them. But I will say, hey, I'm going to meet with your parent. Let's say they're third, fourth, fifth, or they're savvy first or second grade. I'm going to meet with your parent next week. I'm going to talk all about how great you're doing in here. And I wonder if there's anything you want me to tell them. And they'll be like, I don't. So sometimes they're like, what are you talking to me about this for? And sometimes they'll say what they say, or they'll say, why are you meeting with them? And I'll say, I'm working with them on their parenting skills. I'm trying to teach them. So really, it's about, when I'm meeting with your parents, it's about them and how they can see, hear, and understand you the best way.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay. Oh, also you could use a reflection. You're really concerned about what it's going to be like when I meet with your parents. So just in general, even if I'm going to answer a question with a kid, I will try to reflect how I think they might be feeling first. Yeah. They might say, I'm not worried. I want to be there. Okay. Okay. Moving along. All right. So tracking and reflection. She could be using this to maintain communication and the whole time. And you can teach the parent how to do this. All right. Well, now we're getting to how could they involve imaginative play in this? And again, it might not look exactly like the playroom where a child says, get your side of the army, we're having a battle, and you do this and you do that. But how might we involve imaginative play in the cookie making situation?
I was thinking, if kiddos like moving around, moving their body and noticing, and the parents noticing him moving, it wouldn't be overstimulating for him, like putting on some music and using the whisk and making a little drums, it's kind of like incorporating like music and movement before even getting started to get those wiggles out.
Yeah. So doing something to make it fun and playful in any way. We talked about having it be like a baking show. I would probably be I'd be like, actually, can we record it? Can we make a video? Make a real video about it. I mean, kids love YouTube. They love to pretend to be YouTube. They want to be YouTube. So you could make like a pretend video. That would be fun.
I think you could also lean into the cooking thing by sort of being like, what's next, chef? Like being very like the bear of like, yes, chef. And I think that would give that kid a sense of like control and, you know, getting to be the leader in the scenario. And again, I think you'd have to structure that like, you know, are you wanting to make cookies or are you wanting to make a connection? Because both might be a lot.
Yeah.
For this. But that's probably what I'd lean into, to lean into some imaginative without necessarily trying to like run it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really depends on the kid, and it makes me also think about their growth. Like there's the first time they make cookies together, and then there's what happens as they grow together, and what if they could grow to be like, yes, okay, guess what? You are in charge of this one. You've grown so much in cookie making. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to incorporate imagination when you're like making the little cookie balls or pressing them. I don't know, however you make it, having them interact with each other. But yeah, using imagination can keep you, I think, outside of your worry. That is a way that kids and people cope with stress. All right. And what about limit setting? How might this mom have to set limits during this?
What I tell parents and filials, that part of limit setting is knowing ahead of time what some of your limits are. And kids will find limits you didn't even know you had, and that's fine.
Yes.
But if, you know, for instance, I don't do glitter in my playroom because like it's gonna dysregulate me. I'm gone, I'm not there with the kids. So I just don't put it in the playroom.
Yeah.
So what I might say to mom is, you know, when we're thinking about limit setting, is what are the things that are really going to be just like a, you know, send you over the limit, like spilling all of the vanilla, right? So maybe we get to a place where like that is an okay thing, but if we're going to meet her where she's at, you know, maybe, yeah, you do the pre poured out stuff. You know, think about some of the things that you're concerned about before kid gets in there so we can set them up for success.
Yeah, definitely. So and think about that in the structuring. What are some things that you absolutely cannot handle? Like flour. That'd be like the glitter of baking. You know, like you're finding it everywhere forever. Yeah. What else? Thank you, Miranda. That was good.
Maybe like I measure, you mix.
Yeah. What about when a kid, I keep saying the parent, the kid. I want you to know I do have love in my heart for my clients. What about when the child is pushing the limits? The limits of let's say they are stirring and it's like flying everywhere, or they are taking flour and they're throwing it. How might Jane handle that?
Maybe she could still kind of throw in some reflections there, of like, oh, you're having so much fun, you're making a flower snow brigade, I don't know. And then also coming back to the structure of like, so maybe we'll take a second, maybe we'll put a timer on for a minute, and then we can kind of clean up and talk about these things. And then once we're able to come back into the space, once Jane's back regulated and the kiddo's back regulated in the space, we come back to it. So adding the reflection and structure in that, taking that pause break and then getting back into it.
Yeah, you could take a pause break. You could come up with that together. And Yeah, and I think reflecting the emotion, so you're really excited, and no matter where I am, I do the like in here. So like in the playroom, I volunteer in a kindergarten, in the classroom, at this school, in this family, in this kitchen, at this house. You're so excited. In this kitchen, we don't throw flour everywhere. You can do almost anything else. And I don't know. It would be hard to get to. Can you imagine a situation where Jane might have to end this?
If he's being unsafe with any of the utensils, I think that would be a limit of like, we need to kind of take a pause, or seems like you're very excited. Seems like you're having some big feelings right now, and we want to be safe. So I'm wondering if we can, and maybe incorporate some kind of like breathing or something like that. But that's kind of like my first thought is anything that's unsafe, that's one of my hard limits in the playroom. So same thing here. We want to make sure we're being safe.
Yeah. And that could be part of the structuring. You know, we're not super overt about it in child-centered play, but you could say, hey, I want you to know if things get really unsafe, and that's if you know your child, if things get really unsafe, we will end the cookie making and come back to it tomorrow or whenever, you know. Yeah, I would say for extreme instances of unsafety, that might be a way. And I would also encourage Jane to do that, even if it does not feel good, because this is Jane setting a limit. Do you think, I mean, what do you think? Do you think Jane's a good limit setter or no, based on what you know?
I think based on the previous, like our intro to Jane, she repeats herself quite a few times.
Yeah.
So I think limit setting is difficult. So I think even if she set the limit, then she might have to follow through, even if it's just flour on the floor.
Yeah. And Jane is scared to set limits because she doesn't want to be a bad mom, because she already doesn't get along with her own mom. And so Jane's learning about setting limits and sticking with them. And then that kind of takes us to unconditional positive regard. You know, like how can she set that limit and have unconditional positive regard?
Well, this is where, when you mentioned earlier the synergistic stuff, for her to model, like, I'm noticing that as you're throwing the flour, I'm feeling really nervous or really anxious, and I don't want us to blow up. I don't want us to fight. And so I'm going to take a pause. Why don't you go do whatever, and I'll go do this?
Yeah.
Just to kind of like narrate play by play for her what's happening, even if it's not a safety thing, just if she's getting dysregulated.
Yeah. So to model your own feelings and I guess as a way to stay in unconditional positive regard. Yeah, for sure. Great.
I also try and incorporate redos, right? So giving the child an opportunity to, you know, like with the flour, like, ooh, is that where the flour usually goes? If it's like all over the place, like what else can we do, right? So you're helping them problem solve, helping them work through, you know, that moment. And then in the redo, the parent is also like kind of taking a breath and saying like, okay, how else can we manage this situation? But yeah, making sure they have that opportunity to redo.
I also have an idea of like trying to allow for a little bit of that, like, oh, like reflecting, like, oh, it seems like you're so excited and you have so much energy, like all over the place. Like, I wonder if we could try something like, can we play Simon Says and like maybe lean in to like stirring quickly for like a minute and then shift to being like, okay, now let's like pretend to be turtles and like turtle baking show and like go really slow to like modulate that a little bit more in a way that's like playful, and then maybe getting the control back of like, okay, now you do Simon Says and I'll stir, and like getting that bowl back in your like safety of like what you're allowing.
Yeah, I feel like that also could go with like imaginative play. And also, I don't know. I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's like what OTs do to like help regulation. Or like even the gestalt of it all. You're like going to go experiment with being really fast and experiment with being a slow. So mindfulness. Yeah, there's so much there. Yeah. And I think having unconditional positive regard like means, hey, the expectations did not happen today. And it doesn't mean that I'm bad, and it doesn't mean that you're bad or that this was bad. It means that we weren't able to let's go get some store-bought cookies. We're not doing this today. But it's not about like, I'm crying, you're crying, we're screaming at each other, you're running to your room. And I'm very disappointed in everything that happened. Like when we go into the playroom, I don't think it's as easy for parents, but when I go into the playroom, actually sometimes I do go into the playroom and I'm like, I hope it's not a big mess. And but I can't be like mad about it if it is, because that's what my job is, and that's what I said. So kind of like having a unconditional positive regard about the messiness, and who they are, and not making a value judgment. You always do this. No, you can't do the egg. This isn't going to work. Oh man, I'm never going to get all this flour out. So all of that stuff are those normal? Yeah, but that's not going to have that's not unconditional positive regard. And part of, I think, the structuring for us is knowing that a child does not have the same capabilities with their hands that an adult does, or the same capabilities of regulation and all of that stuff. And shame is not a great tool for learning. It's a great tool for behavior, for getting people to stay in line. Okay, so we're gonna talk about, I'm gonna just ask if there's any questions, and also encourage people to look in the chat, because I think people are sharing in there. Yeah, ACT limit setting. So acknowledge what's going on. Talk about, hey, if you keep doing this, we're not going to be able to finish making cookies. And then you can, what's the T? You can try something else. All right, any questions? Let's talk about some different scenarios that come up in children's lives. Here's a few that I came up with, and I'd be glad to hear any more, but these are some kind of day-to-day things. So let's just talk about waking up in the morning. How can a parent be reflecting when they see their child first thing in the morning? Hello.
Maybe if, depending on how the child is showing up, like, oh, it looks like you were in a really deep sleep last night if their eyes are still puffy or something like that.
Yes. You were sleeping so hard. Your eyes are so puffy.
You're so sleepy. That bed is so warm. You do not want to get up this morning.
That is so warm. Yeah. You had dreams all night long. No, I didn't. Oh, you didn't have any dreams. Okay. Yeah. You are waking up slowly. You're ready to get up and go get your teeth. I don't know, whatever you do first. You're ready to come down in the morning. Just like they can be using tracking and reflection constantly. What about nighttime routines?
You're having so much fun, you don't want to go to bed yet.
Yeah. You don't want to go to bed yet, and 2 stories is what we do at nighttime. I just remember that so deeply from my own childhood. I really wanted a 3rd story. you guys.
You had a really exciting day and you want to tell me all about it.
Yeah, you had a really exciting day and you want to tell me all about it. And I'm going to be here for 5 minutes. Or I'm going to listen to it all, however it is that it's going to go. Oh. How about something like transitioning between parents' houses? This is something a lot of kids who come to play therapy or child therapy are there because their parents are not getting along and they've got to adjust to something really big. How can a parent use reflection with their child who's going to their mom's house or their dad's house?
I like to tell my kiddos who are in a situation like that, I just say, part of you misses mom when you're with dad, and part of you is happy to be with dad. And so just normalizing, like, it's okay to miss both of them, or when they're drawing mom and dad together, it makes sense.
Yeah. What can a parent say? A parent could say that. You really miss me when you're with your dad, and you really miss your dad when you're with me.
I think you can also reflect body language. Like, I can see that your shoulders are slumped and you're feeling a little shy, or you cannot stay in this car seat. You are ready to get out. You are so ready to go see this other parent.
Yeah. Yes.
I think also like reflecting the challenges of like all the additional things that you need to keep track of when switching houses. Like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating to bring all your stuff with you. What if you're afraid you're gonna forget something?
Yeah, resonating with them and attuning about the kinds of things that they have to do. It's so hard to be here without your special bunny, and you left it at your dad's. And in some cases, you can't go to dad's to get it, you know? A lot of cases you can, but sometimes you can't. It's really hard to go so many days without talking to your mom. What about, I don't think I have that. What about like when their child's having a meltdown? Because parents come to me all the time and say, what can I do? My child had a huge meltdown. They won't go to school. They won't leave the activity. They won't stop fighting with their sibling. What about using tracking and reflection? And I'm always like, did you reflect? Did you use tracking? Did you structure the situation? Did you set a limit? What about that? Like when a child is having a meltdown in your office, what do you say to them?
I've had a couple of clients that really struggle with transitioning out of the playroom. And so there's a lot of, I hear that you would like to play for more time. And unfortunately, our timer went off for today.
Yeah.
And I will be here next week.
Yeah. So a lot of reflection of feelings, and motivations. You don't want to, so let's say you're at the trampoline park. You love it here. You're having so much fun. You're jumping your head off. And it's time to go. We got to leave. We got to eat dinner. We have stuff to do. You are ready to leave. Look at that. You're standing up. You're walking to your shoes. Okay. We're ready to go. So you can be reflecting the whole time. And I know that it might sound strange to parents, but it's really impactful for a child's mental health and how they feel when somebody's acknowledging how they feel and not gaslighting them and not saying like, no, it's time, and being kind of like arbitrary, you know. So there's room in every area for all of the ways for parents to use reflection at all times. And you can help them learn how to do these reflections, either by modeling it, by using reflections with them, doing role plays with them, having them observe you work with their child, doing things like this, hey, let's come up with a bunch of different reflections that you can use with your child. And even going through this process. Okay, how might you use structuring in this situation? You can break it down with the parent. How might you use tracking and reflection? How can you use your imagination when you're transitioning between parents' houses? I can think of a bunch of different weird ways, and how can you use limit setting? And remember, limit setting isn't necessarily like the 3 limits in child-centered play, but it's just about being really consistent. All right. What are some questions that you have in our final moments together? And it could be about anything.
Like really, truly anything?
Yeah.
Play-
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I'll bring up something that is going on for me right now that I would love to get some play therapist input on from the group. I am transitioning out of my practice and I'm going to start my own practice, which I'm very excited for. In between, I'm having surgery and I will be off for 4 to 6 weeks-ish. And I have to figure out how to tell my clients about that. And I don't want to scare kids by saying like, oh, I'm having the surgery. And my parents know that I have some chronic pain stuff that's been going on because I've been missing sessions. Like, just how would you explain that, phrase it, or not talk about it at all? Like throwing that out to the group.
I'm just looking at everybody to see if anybody's going to answer.
I was going to say, I don't want to step on any toes either, Jen, so I'm going to give some space.
I have a suggestion or curious. I mean, I think it depends on the age of your clients and like whether they're able to take that in and like what level of honesty or like the full story that you want to give them. And also reflecting on any emotions that come up about like, oh, you're worried I might not come back, or like you're worried about what's happening. You're curious about what this is. When will you be back? Those kinds of things. And like exploring that with them if you choose to tell them.
So Miranda, I did put a shameless training plug in the chat. We have an upcoming training, not on surgery specifically, but I will self-disclose. I am a cancer survivor and dealt with similar things going through telling clients of like, how do I do this when I'm out and I'm going to have a lot of physical changes and they're going to see that and kids are going to call you on it. And learned that there wasn't a ton of resources available to us of like, what do you say and what do you self-disclose and what do you not self-disclose? And it's a hard world to navigate when we're looking at things like chronic illnesses and major surgeries and things like that. And so we as an agency have spent a lot of time exploring that. Kate Armstrong is another wonderful TikToker. If you aren't following her, please go do that as well. But she is doing a training for us later in June about bridging the gap on self-disclosure specific to cancer, but applicable to all things. She's a mental health therapist, also a breast cancer survivor. And so she's coming to talk about kind of how we do that. But a lot of what we learned is kind of giving Sarah, I will email you. I will email everybody. There's been a few that have left early with the links, but I'm going to get them in the chat here as well. But kind of being like we are with families with kids, kind of being age appropriately honest, right, of what's going on, so that they're not worrying and filling in the gaps as they do with like big elaborate stories that are super scary. And then not over self-disclosing with things that don't feel comfortable or unnecessary. So I don't know if there's a black and white right or wrong. I haven't found one. If somebody has, let us know, because we are actively searching for all of those things that don't seem to exist yet in this world.
Yeah, and what if you, Miranda, also thought about structuring, tracking and reflection, limit setting, and unconditional positive regard? Like, how are you going to structure this? depending on the child, depending on the age, depending on the family. How are you going to use tracking and reflection to help them process and understand the emotions they have about not seeing you for a while or whatever might be happening to you? What are some imaginative ways that you can think of that they can stay connected to you during the time you're gone, like the invisible string or whatever kind of things, imagine it, whenever you want to think of me, I don't know, whatever you come up with. And limit setting, how much do you want to disclose? What's important to you for people to know? And unconditional positive regard, some people might be like, great, see you in a few weeks. And some people might be like really upset, and you have room for all of it. So you can really, like, when I'm talking about applying these skills to life, like do it for you as well, to set up the success for yourself.
Awesome. Thank
and
you.
I hope that you are okay. And
I am. It's a surgery that I think is really going to help. So I'm actually very excited for it.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of life is happening. I got my license and then I got to get the surgery and all the things.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about anything?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so as I'm trying to, get into play therapy, I'm wondering, to what extent am I okay to be involved in the play? Because I'm like playing puppets with my 7-year-old, and he's like, okay, you're the evil brother. And I'm like 2 paragraphs deep in this monologue of my villain origin story. I'm like, am I directing? Am I now becoming directive?
I think when it comes to play, I think being invited into the play is important versus jumping into the play. And also, if the child says, do your villain origin story, then that's when you do your villain origin story, but not unless they say that. Does that make sense? Or they might say, you're the villain. And you might say, should I give my origin story? Yeah.
Okay.
Or no. Shut up. No, or like, yeah, only if you're an alien. So like they're going to give you more information. Or you might start with your villain origin story and you might find that they're like, they don't like how it hits, and they'll give you more. So whatever they're saying, having unconditional positive regard and pivoting, like, oh, okay. Oh, I'm not the villain anymore. I'm a ghost. Oh, all right. And it's really like they are action and you are the cast.
Cool. Asking. Great. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. If you are like, I don't get reflection at all, you know what? Just email me. We'll talk about it. I want you to feel comfortable, but it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of risk to to try it and see how people react and finding out, oh, they're actually pretty okay with it. Yeah. And I will see you out there on TikTok. Thank you so much for watching and following and coming to this training. Colleen, do you have anything to say?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much. I know we ran a little bit over. Did put a note there. When you finish your quiz, you'll get an email that says, yay, you passed. There's a password in that email because it's a HIPAA compliant platform that we use. So you'll need to just copy in that password in order to download your certificate. I also in the chat put all of the ways to access Jen, as well as information about other ways to see more trainings with Jen. She is doing an amazing symposium coming up the first, I was gonna say the first week of June, that's like next week, Jen. But go check that out so that you can see her with Jackie Flynn in the 6th Annual Child Therapy Symposium. All of her social media things are in the chat. I attached the link to You Need a Training and some of our upcoming webinars so that you can access those. Like I said, the evaluation is there. So if you have any questions or have any trouble accessing any of that, please don't hesitate to reach out. But again, thank you all so much for being here, and don't forget that you need a training.
Thank you for joining in on today's training. We look forward to having you join us again. Heart & Solutions is proud to provide CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below.